What's up guys, welcome back to the Retro Hub. So I'm not sure how many of you were around for this, but last year I made a video where I compared the Miyu Mini Plus, the Anbernic RG35XX Plus, and the Trimui brick. I had gotten the Miyu Mini Plus around the same time that I got the Trimui brick, so I decided that making a video comparing the two to the one device they're constantly pit against would be a better idea than making two videos, one dedicated to each device. That video did pretty well for me, so it's safe to assume that that was a good idea. But that wasn't the last we'd see of the Trimui brick. Earlier this year, during the summer, Trimui announced the Brick Hammer, which is basically just the original brick, but made out of metal instead of plastic. This does seem like a very inconsequential change, but they changed up the look and the colors enough to make this a very interesting addition to the brick lineup. Also, making a device called brick and not making it out of a harsh material is just a disservice to what it's named after. The original brick was made out of plastic and you can definitely tell. It's not cheap plastic, so it's still kind of harsh, but you can tell that it's plastic. So they've gone from plastic on the original to metal on the Brick Hammer. Maybe next year they'll release a model called the Brick Metal made out of an actual brick. I'd welcome it. So they announced and released the Brick Hammer a little while ago. I thought it looked really cool, but didn't really have any plans on getting one because I already made a video on the original about a year ago, and honestly, I just didn't want to spend the money. But Lit NXT reached out to me and was like, hey, do you want either the Miyu Flip or the Trimui Brick Hammer to review? And what, am I gonna say no? I already have the Miyu Flip and didn't review it because of hardware issues I couldn't get fixed, so I opted for the Brick Hammer, perfect excuse to finally get one. But speaking of, Lit NXT is the perfect website for your handheld emulation needs. The holiday season is rapidly approaching, and I'm sure many of you watching want a certain portable emulator or are thinking about getting one for a loved one. Well, Lit NXT is the perfect website to buy from. They have countless devices on their website ranging from the Trimui Brick Hammer to different Miyu, Anbernic, and Magic X devices. They didn't sponsor this video, so they didn't tell me to say any of this, and they also have no control over what I say about the Brick Hammer. But if you are looking to get something for someone special this holiday season, use the code REFERGEORGE at checkout because that'll let them know that I sent you and it'll help the channel out a ton. Thank you Lit NXT for the Brick Hammer. Now let's get back to talking about it. Moving on to the specs, the Brick Hammer is the exact same as the original in terms of internals. They both have a single gigabyte of RAM, they use the same PowerVR GE8300 GPU, there's 8 gigabytes of built-in storage which can be expanded all the way up to a terabyte through SD cards. They both have a 3.2-inch 1024 by 768 IPS display, and they both have a 3000 mAh battery. They're also the exact same dimensions, exact same size and everything. The biggest difference between the two is obviously the shell, and it's the only difference. Like I said previously, the Brick Hammer is made out of metal instead of plastic like the original, which makes it a lot more durable and a lot more solid. Something else that's kind of cool about the shell of these devices is that on the original, brick was engraved all over in different spots, but now hammer is engraved on the hammer, which I think is really cool and is just really cool if you're into that sort of thing. One downside of the new metal shell is that it gets really cold really easily, and now that the temperature is dropping in New York, I can see this becoming a slightly bigger issue, but that just comes with metal. It warms up once you start using it, but every time I pick it up from my desk, it's really cold to the touch, which is obviously different from the original brick, which just felt like warm plastic whenever I picked it up. So the hammer comes in a few different colors, which are all really cool. I have the dark gray model and I think it looks the sleekest out of all of the colors. The pink and the green both look really nice, but in terms of metal looking devices, this one is probably the best choice. The black could also be a contender, but I think it's too dark. The photos they show just make it look like it'll disappear in any dim lighting, which I don't love. The silver also just looks nice. In terms of selling the metal aspect, the silver or dark gray are probably the best because they actually look like the metal that most people imagine when they hear the word metal, but all of the colors look really nice, so what you choose is really up to your personal preference. I fell in love with the original Trimui brick about a year ago when I first got it, in large part because of its controls. I mistakenly thought before I got it that it would just be another RG35XX Plus or Miyu Mini Plus clone. And in a way it kind of is. I can't really imagine it would exist if it wasn't for these two devices. But even so, it is an amazing device for how small it is. The D-pad is solid, the buttons feel really clicky, and the triggers can easily be swapped out with others that come right in the box depending on what you want. There aren't many controls in these two devices, but the ones they do have feel really good, and that is a trend that started on the original brick and continues on the Brick Hammer because they are basically the same device. Also, something that kind of involves the controls, but is something I kind of just want to talk about regardless, there are LED lights all over this device. They are just there for aesthetics, but I do really like them. I have mine set to red and I don't really care to change it. I think the red looks really cool, especially under the triggers. Sure, it's annoying when you're playing in the dark, but that honestly just helps me remember where the controls are, so it's not something I see as an issue. That was just something small I wanted to point out. Let's move on. Lit NXT sent this to me with a case and an SD card that had a slightly customized custom firmware pre-installed, which I'm happy about. One of my biggest complaints about the original Trimui brick is that the built-in software was just extremely convoluted, and I couldn't really understand it for a little while. I had to literally look up how to get to my games library, but this isn't that different, but it looks nicer, in my opinion, which is better. Most of these Linux-based devices don't have great operating systems right out of the box, but the Miu Mini Plus and RG35XX Plus at least were basic. The Trimui software tried to be unique, but ended up confusing a noob like me back when I first got it. This OS is really nice though, very clean, and you can switch between games and systems really easily. The SD card that this thing came with is 256GB in size, which is far too much for any device that can barely play up to N64 games. And as I'm sure you can assume, it came with just a million ROMs pre-installed, which means that I've been jumping between a lot of different games. But what I've recently realized is that I love these smaller devices for gaming in short bursts, which means I've been playing a lot of Dr. Mario. I don't play many long games on these smaller devices. Weirdly enough, I did beat the original Professor Layton game on the RG35XX Plus, but I haven't been that dedicated to a game recently enough to justify doing something like that again. I looked around online for the best retro puzzle games to play that aren't Tetris, and that's when I found Dr. Mario, and I'm obsessed. It's a fun time waster. If I have like 15 minutes to kill, I'm not going to pull out my Iron Thor, I'm going to pull the hammer out of my pocket and play a few rounds of Dr. Mario. It's not a very hard game, I'm just not very good at video games, which means that I've been stuck at level 9 for a while now, and haven't been able to get past it yet. I've also been playing a lot of WarioWare for the GBA. I played it a lot on the original Trimui brick back when I got that about a year ago, but I finally beat it on the brick hammer. These smaller, more bite-sized games are what I love these budget or Game Boy-esque devices for. They're easy to pick up and play for short bursts, and when you're done, just put it in the sleep mode and put it back in your pocket. Easy as pie. This isn't to say you can't play through entire games on this thing. I actually think these devices are great for revisiting some older games, no matter the length. I just have a harder time dedicating so much time to these devices when I have bigger, more powerful devices staring right at me. I actually got a good amount into Golden Sun for the GBA back on the original brick, but I stopped right before the Colosso and haven't picked it back up yet. Maybe this will be a good excuse to pick it back up. Hasn't yet, but we'll see. I know I've been dancing around the topic, but the brick hammer can play a good amount of retro systems. Basically every 2D system is playable, and even some N64 and OG PlayStation games can run on here, which is really impressive. Obviously the 3D games are going to be awkward since there's no joystick, but if you're willing to look past the awkward controls, they're a nice addition to a really cool retro emulator. Do not buy this device for N64 or PlayStation 1 games because you are going to be disappointed with the performance, and there are devices that are much better at playing N64 and PlayStation 1 games that aren't that much more expensive than the brick hammer. Think of it more as a cool addition to your retro system, not like a selling point. But all of these are able to run on the original brick as well as the hammer, seeing as they are the exact same device because they have the exact same internals. I just thought it was important to point out for someone that might not be familiar with the original brick. So yeah, the Trimui brick hammer is an excellent refresh of an already amazing device. The metal shell is enough to get me excited to use it. Whether or not it's enough to get people who own the original brick to double dip is up to each individual person to decide. It wasn't enough for me, but that was more of an issue of what devices I feel like I should spend my money on to review on this channel, and which devices I'd be fine to skip. Obviously I love the hammer and I'm so happy I have one to review. Thank you again, Lit NXT, but I already own a brick, so I decided that I personally would order the Ein and Anbernic devices over buying the hammer myself. But what do you guys think? Do you already have the original Trimui brick and are thinking of double dipping on the brick hammer, or is the metal shell not enough to convince you? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys next week. Goodbye.